Hello and welcome to the Front Row Back Row podcast. My name is Dr. Owen Campbell. I'm the owner of Simplify Motion Physical Therapy in Phoenix, Arizona. And with me, as always, is Dr. Brian Wolf, owner of Evolution PT and Fitness in Connecticut and Long Island. And we are both the co-owners of Physio Growth. This podcast, the Front Row Back Row podcast, is brought to you by Physio Growth. We help businesses develop programs, build themselves, build the actual business owners so that they can really attack some of the problems that any physical therapy owner will feel and will interact with. And today we're actually going to talk about one of those. Brian got a great question from someone that he's consulting. So Brian, why don't you kind of set us up here? What are we going to be talking about today?
So basically something we've been talking about was how to add, so if you're, whether you're insurance based or you're a cash based physical therapist, and for me, I think this is near and dear to my heart, particularly for the insurance based physical therapists out there. How do
Yeah.
you add more cash based services? How do you add different services to your business? Because I think that every physical therapist, whether you're cash based practice or an insurance based practice, is missing out big time if they don't understand how to do different cash-based services.
Well, and this is what I think honestly is the future of PT. I mean, I had a few drinks in me the other day. I was talking to somebody and they basically said, what's your vision, right?" And I think that we can't just be latched on to whatever an insurance company is going to provide us because that's always going to go down. We can't control that revenue stream. The only lever we can really do is do increasing volume, right? So I truly believe that the way to make being a PT fun as a business owner, great for our patients, is to find a way to either do what you do with Evolution, where it's a hybrid, where you get, half your money comes from your cash based revenue and half of it comes from your insurance based revenue. Um, or all cash. But I think that sweet spot in the middle is something that you guys have done so well at Evolution, and I'm really jacked up to hear some of the stuff that you've done because you started the company doing that, so you don't have to claw out of the whole like, oh, we're 98% insurance, like how do we dig this? Because I know some of our listeners are in that position right now. I got that question at the gym the other day. That's what started this.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this, like my other big thing is, say you're a staff physical therapist that's listening to
Mm.
this, thinking about starting your own practice. And you're like, oh my God, the uphill battle, what do I have to do? There is a huge gap here where, like, again, I talk with some of my staff PTs. I'm like, help me build one of these systems. And I'll bring you in as a partner for this, right? Like in theory. So
Yeah.
like one of our PTs was talking about she's getting a kettlebell certification. And I was like, let's build a workshop. If the workshop really takes off and we start adding a bunch of revenue because of it, right? Like I who do you think I'm giving raises to? Right? Like
Well,
who's that?
that's it. There's
Right.
there's not that many PTs out there, and the
Yeah.
ones that have good ideas that bring in cash-based revenue that we don't have to worry about insurance, like absolutely, here, take my money, like let's go.
Exactly. This is the frustration I think that a lot of physical therapists have that come and work for us. Is basically what'll end up happening. They'll say, well, I work at this company and like I have all these great ideas, and then they want nothing to do with them. They just are
Mhm.
like, hey, just like see patients, right? It's almost like
Yeah,
it's like the classic like NBA player who's like, hey, I really want to do this or talk about this issue, and everyone's like, shut up and dribble, right? It's
yeah,
like the same thing. Like it's the same mentality. Like, listen, just see patients. We don't need to be doing that. You're not in a
yeah,
position to innovate. Well, guess what? That person wants to leave. So like for us,
yeah.
we've always been a big believer in trying to help those people innovate. And so I think in this way, this is a huge piece of how you can help people. So
Yeah.
no, I'm a huge believer in that and how to
The
help
worst
that
that'll
grow.
happen is they'll be a really energetic partner later when
Yeah.
you open a 15th clinic. Like come on,
Yeah.
it's so short-sighted. I've been in multiple companies where that's the case, where it's like, yeah, that's nice. We'll listen to you in this forum. Absolutely, can't wait for that. Would you like some pizza while we tell you your ideas? And then it's just
Exactly.
like, yeah, okay. Okay, so
Exactly.
what are some of the cool things that you've been doing? Like, so you talk to this guy, right? And he's like, dude, what's going on? Give me some ideas. What are some things that you see have moved the needle? I can always share some stuff that I've done outside of just the one-on-one cash treatments. But yeah, I mean, you've been doing it at scale for a while. So like, what are some of the good ones you got?
I think in general, what you want to think about, especially where you are in your business, is what fits in with your vision, right?
Mhm.
So if I'm doing something in particular, like again, at Evolution, our mission is to bridge the gap between rehab and performance and change the perception of physical therapy, right?
Mhm.
And so if we're doing that, a great example is I was on the phone with an athletic director today, and the thing when you're adding value to those people or anybody in general is you're addressing a pain point for them. So here's exactly a great example of how we do it. So again, our cash-based services, we do physical therapy cash-based services, but we're mainly an insurance-based clinic. So we get a bunch of revenue from that. We do athletic training services, which address a lot of pain for a lot of people. And then we also do strength and conditioning specialist stuff. And then we also do stuff in professional sports and beyond in terms of doing more consultative work, right? Which
Mm.
it's consultations in physical therapy, athletic training, and in strength and conditioning, right? If you think about it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I, in having these conversations, and somebody asked me like, how did you do this? How did you do that? Right. A lot of it is, what is the person's pain point? What do they need help with? And
Mm.
can we address it and fix it? And if we can address it and fix it, can we find a common ground on the, whether it's monetary or whatever that works for everybody, right? And then the idea behind that thinking is, how does it help the other sectors of the business, right? And
Okay.
that's how you can put the money aspect aside for some of this stuff.
Okay.
So, for instance, a great example of this would be when we do, athletic training coverage for high schools in the area. So when
Mhm.
we do that, some of these make us great money and have good profit margins. Other ones just help us break even. And if they help us break even, essentially, if we're driving clients into the clinic through that, obviously there's our profit, right? We're making
Mm.
money. So it's a market.
Yep.
We're basically getting paid to market. We've talked about the cost of acquiring customer. That means the cost
Yeah.
of acquiring customer was zero for that, right? So it's going to
And
lower your cost.
And just to jump in on the athletic training point, because I know that's a common way of bringing people into your clinic for a lot of even big box PTs.
Mhm.
People don't understand that just because the big box PT has the big high school, it doesn't mean they have every high school,
Yes.
right? And every single one of those athletic directors would love some athletic training coverage. And there are very motivated, very awesome athletic trainers out there who want to get out and do that stuff. So if you are thinking, man, I'm not a big enough player, believe me, I can tell you in Phoenix, there's a lot of uncovered high schools because everyone thinks one group has it and they don't.
Well, and the other part of it is, man, is like, I can't tell you how many times, like a great example is like one of the local high schools we work with in here. We had a PTAT who worked for us. And the
Mhm.
nice thing about PTAT is it allows you to have that versatility. So one of the
Yeah.
things that really worked out nicely was she started off just 10 hours a week at Darien High School. She actually started off in youth football in the area.
Okay.
And then what happened was she met the athletic director. The athletic director, so we're covering this youth football league. Then the athletic director essentially approached her and was like, hey, we're down in AT. We'd love some help. She went in 10 hours a week. That turned into then a full-time AT position that turned into 2 full-time AT positions for us as a contract. So it's also like
Perfect.
where you could start, right? It's like, for instance, we're talking another school and the athletic director was like, and this is the great position, right? There's also private high schools out there that like don't have lights, for instance. So they don't have
Yeah.
lights. So a lot of this stuff ends at 7 o'clock. So now what happens is they got to sprint. They got to get it all done before the lights are out, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we talked about is I was like, she's like, well, we're really looking for like a part-time position from 3 to 7 Monday through Friday. I'm like, well, you also know this is not a part-time position, right? Like that's not a part-time.
Yeah.
That is the
Yeah.
what they're looking for is someone to do 80 to 90% of the work. That's the heavy load lifting, but only have to
Yep.
pay half the money, right? That's what they're
Yeah.
doing in the budget. Well, great. Guess what? Our company is awesome for filling in that gap because what'll be
Yeah.
great is, in theory, we can just make sure that we're making a little bit of money, breaking even, like not crushing it there, but ultimately getting in with that school and getting those parents and getting those kids and like sports, strength and conditioning can be in there. Maybe there's other growth opportunities, much like that 10 hours, it can grow
Yeah.
that way, right? So,
Well, and I think that's really good. If you look at someone like you, where you're scaled, right? You have multiple employees. You can say, "Oh, we can open up an athletic training position, so we can do this." Absolute great lever to pull. Good market to get into. Very reliable way of getting you feeding your PTs, right? And I think the other thing that I think you do really well, and this is something that you may not have to have the scale that you have. This could be done by a solopreneur, maybe one or two PT clinic. I think you guys do a really good job with your fitness stuff,
yeah.
right? So just and I think we talked about this a little bit about like um, how your wife Kelly thought of, and this has been on my brain probably for the last like 2 weeks since we talked about it, but she came at the cash pay angle for PT and basically said, look, what are people more likely to pay for
Mm,
a massage session, right? Because she really loves hands on therapy, a massage session or a PT session. Well, they're used to getting PT subsidized, not massage. So
for
she
sure.
will come at it as a massage therapist or a massage is what she really promotes and puts her marketing into. And then, oh, by the way, here's some exercises that I'm actually going to help you. Right. And
Exactly.
I think you guys do that from, how it's always manual therapy versus exercise therapy. You guys do that from the exercise side because I think you're not as like touchy feely as
Yeah.
your
Well,
wife.
Well, a great example would be
You
like
do
if I
manual
was,
therapy, but
yeah, exactly.
you came at it
I know
from
what you
the
mean.
people are more used to paying for personal training and fitness sessions. Let's get them into our ecosystem there
Yeah.
and then do it. So I think that's a great thing that you guys do too.
I think the key is like thinking, realizing that I think what we're really talking about in that scenario, right? And all in all, whether it's fitness, massage, PT, is that like it's our brains that people are paying for,
Yeah,
right? It's our brains that people are paying for, not necessarily the service. They're paying for the service, but the person utilizing and doing the service has the brain to do it, right?
yeah,
I have the hands-on to do a massage. I have the hands-on to do nutrition. I have the hands-on to do, the fitness piece. I have hands-on for the physical therapy side of it. It really depends on how you look at it. And what you're doing is when you think of it that way, by the way, sales gets so much easier in that capacity. If
mm,
I'm looking at where is the person and where do they need my help and where can I fix their problems, I promise you're going to add so much more value to people's lives than how do they fit into my system.
yeah,
It's like it's harder, right? I think, and again, like to your point about the fitness, like we crush it on fitness and are continuing to grow there. And I think a lot of it is whether it's athletes and one-on-one sessions, small groups, and large groups. That is such a great aspect. And I'll tell you when I realized that fitness was really great. For those of you who are physical therapists that are starting out in CrossFit gyms or gyms, think about how you're like, I'm going to get clients from the gym. Well, imagine if you were the gym. Not only would you have the
yeah,
clients in the gym, you control where they go. Like
yeah,
they trust you. And like I have a client today. She has struggled to get into the gym, and then all of a sudden she's getting up. She's, oh my god, my plantar fasciitis is flaring up. And I literally go, have you done PT for that? And she goes, no, I really need to do it. I was like, well, when we walk out the door, I'm going to talk to Michelle and get you signed up. I'm like, and then here's the advantage I have. I'm like, what's your insurance? She's like, X. I'm like, perfect. We're in network with them.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And before she walked out the door, she made another appointment. So to think
yeah.
about that, that's the upsell that just happened. Now physical
Mhm.
therapy became the upsell, not, and that's the difference with the big box PT. To your point about insurance, now it's on the cash based service, and what I did was I upselled them on the insurance versus
Mhm.
the insurance being, holy crap, what can I upsell them on from a cash based. It's so much easier because now I just maximize that dollar. So when we think about the cost requiring customer, I use the fitness to fix the cost requiring the customer. That was pure profit that's not coming through on the physical therapy side. So
Yeah.
when you think of it from that perspective, like that's where fitness can be so freaking effective. And so all I have to do now to continue to increase my PT in here is just to continue to increase my adults in here. That's it.
And I think that's a great example of just using one different way of thinking about it and kind of attacking it in a different way, seeing if it works, trying it out. And I think it's important for anybody listening to this that this is a really great way to elevate your PT practice. And if you want to elevate your PT practice, do it with growth. Our mentorship helps you increase revenue and create a sustainable, thriving business. Join us at school.com/physiogrowth mentorship group.
You almost had it. You almost had it. You're
Almost had
good.
the ad read.
Almost stuck it.
But
Almost stuck it.
seriously, I mean, the cool part about this, we can talk about this conceptually, right? And we can
Yeah.
say, oh yeah, I have this one patient, then I had this one conversation, all that stuff. But then you mentioned customer acquisition costs, and you mentioned I transferred my ad spend for my fitness, and then it transferred over to my physical therapy side, and I save money here and all that stuff. And getting all those numbers all actually to your business, I think is really important because it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, probably anybody listening to this is probably also listening about 7 other self-help and business motivation things. But to be able to look and say, okay, in your neighborhood, with how much it costs for your rent, with how much this is, what your ad spend will be, blah blah blah. This is how you make it, and you have this amount of money to be able to do it, and you're actually really healthy at this part of the business. So you should feel really confident spending money on ads, or you're not very
Yeah.
healthy at this. Let's figure that out. I think it's really important to think about. So that's my
I think what's awesome
um,
too is, and honestly, it's been something we've been doing these Q&A sessions in the physio growth like Q&A sessions, has been business owners coming up with individual questions, being like, how do I do this? What were some ways to do this? And they can lean on some experience and people asking,
yeah.
and just creating a sounding board, right? It's like, here's how I would do this, here's how I would do that. And it's just such a simple way of
I,
like
I think the
building.
I think the best thing is we failed at it so much that we can tell
That's
them
it.
how not to.
I will.
Like
I will.
if you guys are looking on the video podcast, my gray hairs are really coming out here.
Yeah.
We have screwed up so many times, so you don't have
A
to.
lot, and that'd be a fun podcast to talk about all the stuff we screwed up. You know what
How
I mean?
much
I
we
think I
screwed
think
up,
one,
yeah.
and honestly, keeping it on topic, with, like the cash based services that we can offer from PT
Yeah,
side
tell me
is,
your biggest cash-based screw up. I kinda wanna know this.
yeah, yeah. I think, oh God, what is the biggest screw up? I'll tell you. How's this? I'll tell you where I was going with my thought, and then I'll think about my biggest one as I do it.
Okay,
So the thing that I think is a big screw up that happened is like thinking that, hey, I'm gonna, and it's not from like a huge screw up perspective. It's that you're investing a lot of your time. That's probably one of the biggest screw ups I've made. Investing the time in like, hey, I'm going to sell orthotics, right? Like I'm going to sell orthotics. And the
yeah,
reality is like,
yeah,
you're okay. So you make $1,000 a year on freaking orthotics, or like
uh-huh.
somebody talking about, selling waters, right? Or something like that, or selling protein bars, or selling shirts, right? Like
Yeah, like retail
merch.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, like the merch. Like that stuff is so, like our supplements. That's a great one. That's a great one that drives me crazy. Like we do supplements, but purely I position it this way is all the wholesale pricing that I get for supplements, I pass on for free. Right. So like I'm not like, hey, I get 40% off this product. Like with
okay.
Thorn, I get 15-20%. I think with Thorn, then we get like a bunch of percent, I think we get like 30% off. I'm like, here's 30% off Thorn stuff. Because
Yeah,
and I tell them, I go, full transparency, I want to get kick-ass results, and that way then you want to keep paying me for coaching.
yeah,
Right. So it's like,
that's true.
how can I keep adding more value to somebody? Right.
Well,
And
and
so,
retail's such a heavy lift too, because you gotta market it, you gotta have people coming in and be like,
yeah,
"Ooh, my friend saw this," and all that, and people are like, "Oh, I just throw some stuff in the front of my store and it's gonna work out." Yeah, you'll probably turn a little bit of a profit, but, like, don't spend a lot of time on that because
yeah, yeah. I've
and
watched
not a
more
lot of
people
floor
screw that
space
up.
either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as far as time and like screw ups, fortunately, I can't. Honestly, we tripped up a little bit in the beginning when we were implementing the insurance stuff. That probably would, but
yeah,
I would say in terms of like cash based screw ups, I think I'll tell you where we need to refine stuff was the fitness piece. We didn't charge enough for fitness
okay,
initially. That screwed us in growing.
yeah,
Same thing with athletic training. We didn't charge enough. So that's probably
okay,
the biggest screw up is like, charge what you feasibly can make work. So if you
yeah,
think about if great example is private school she's talking about, she goes, we'll pay this. And I was like, that's not usually what we charge. We usually charge X. Does
yeah,
that work for you? And then again, it's like, and here's a model that will work for us if we do it this
yeah,
way. Right. And then you put the ball in their court. Because the aspect is if you're like, hey, will you take this? And you're like, yeah, I can do that. Kind of like we talked about in a podcast before, a lot harder to move up the chain than move down. A lot
yeah,
easier to be like, hey, here's my number. Here's where I'm going to be. Can you meet me here? Right. And
yeah,
oftentimes, if you're honest and hold true to that, people will pay it if there's
yeah,
value, if the value is there. So it's like,
yeah,
I think people will try and lowball and do that stuff, but the reality is like it won't work. And honestly, right now, like I said, so I'll give you a great example of this. We're talking now with a school that I think will be an awesome fit for them and for us. Like it's a perfect match. Like they told you that 3 to 7 where they want to do all the work. I was like, what if we send a hybrid of PTs and ATs over there and you just pay us an hourly rate and we'll go over there and what we're going to do is we're going to bill for the amount of time and I'll just bill you each week. I also don't want to
yeah,
get in the hourly BS. I don't want to be like, we're here 18 hours and here's 16 hours. Like that's stupid.
yeah.
It's a pain in my ass. So I'm like, hey, here's the block of time you have. Here's the people that are going to
Yeah.
come over. They're going to fill that time. Bang, done. And just
Well,
pay
and
us.
I think the important thing to look at is anybody listening to this with like how do I increase my cash stuff? There's so much stuff you can do, and it's
Yeah.
all about what you're passionate about, what you think your team can sell or you can sell, right? But the biggest expense is really going to be time, right?
Yeah.
Because unless you're buying a lot of product, right? And I mean, it's if you want to go down that road, more power to you, but I wouldn't recommend just buying a bunch of product and trying to sell it because you're kind of withholden to whatever advertising that is. Like all you need is one football player to come out and be like, yeah, this is BS. And then you're holding on to a bunch of product.
Yep.
But a lot of the failure in cash stuff is almost always time. And for a busy clinic owner, that's a really valuable resource. So you have to, I think for busy clinic owners, especially ones that are in like the 90 something percent of taking insurance, you have to know that there's going to be some time wasting while you figure it out. But realize that if you find something that hits and that you can do and that you can reproduce in the long run, that's going to be something that really helps. So,
I would start with to Owen's point what I just loved there, and that's a great Instagram point that we hope we hit. But also like, but
I'll
also
cut
the
it up.
fact, yeah, exactly. I love cut that up. but I would also say to that point, make sure that it's online with your mission, right?
Yeah.
A great example of this would be like if we love work with athletes, we hire PTs to work with those athletes. We try and stay in that realm. An athletic director in a high school is going to be much more on par with our mission versus if I go down the road to go to a skilled nursing facility or an independent living facility and say, hey, we'll do exercise classes for your members, right? Like,
Yeah.
make sure it stays on point. Make sure it doesn't become an expensive job. Make
Yep.
like that high school. I will step into that room and do that. That sounds awesome, right? I may not have
Yeah.
the time. I may not have the bandwidth for it. But if it's not something that I want to do, why would I send my guys to go do? You know what I
But
mean?
that
Like,
may be, but that may
yes,
be a sacrifice you have to make to get it to work in the beginning.
for sure.
And you have to
Especially if,
cancel a few patients, and you have to be passionate about that because you're not
yeah,
going to cancel those patients if you're not. Then why even try?
I think that's something where it's like, especially if you're just starting out, you're trying to grow those relationships and nurture them. 100%. That's something you're going to
Yeah.
want to do, right? So that's the way I look at that. So I think it's awesome. I think there's a lot of different ways you can see that angle, right, Owen? And I mean, look, if you're looking to grow your PT business, Physio Growth mentors physical therapists to achieve greater success and profitability. Visit school.com/physiogrowth-mentorship-group and start growing today.
Ooh, that was very
Yeah,
good.
very nice.
I like
Very
it.
nice.
See, Dalton was right. We're after we do this a few hundred times, we're doing okay.
Exactly. It's easy. It's easy now.
All right, my friend. Well, with that, I am out. Have a good week.
Thanks, man. You too.
See you.
See ya.